Hello, I'm Brett Moss, and you're watching The Defining Moment for Creating the Culture of Conscience. Our guest today is Rev.Keith Russell Lee. Reverend Lee is the accomplished pastor of Destiny Church, which is located in the suburbs of Chicago. Keith is also an entrepreneur. His book, Power, Faith, and Living, offers a spiritual guide to creating an extraordinary life. He's currently working on a PhD from Trinity Theological Seminary in Indiana. Keith is married and the proud father of 3 children. Reverend Keith Russell Lee, welcome back once again to Defining Moments. It's really a pleasure for me to welcome you here today.
And Brett, thank you so much for this privilege and opportunity to be with you. I enjoy so much when we are together.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you for being here. Our topic today is the remnants of a slave religion in today's African American churches. And I'd like to begin by asking you to explain, before the emancipation of slaves, how was Christianity used to oppress slaves?
Well, very easy in terms of understanding that, of course, slavery was all about control. And the powers that were always looked for means and ways to be able to oppress. And so, matter of fact, you may have heard of the famous, or the infamous Willie Lynch letter, which is a historical letter that was attributed for that time, which a wealthy slave owner in Virginia had wrote a letter on how to be able to control the slaves. Well, Willie Lynch didn't talk about Christianity or religion, but primarily though, Christianity, of course, was used to control the slaves, and specifically from the standpoint of being, number one, otherworldliness. So don't worry about life now, but you're going to get everything that you want in the afterlife. So continue to struggle, continue to suffer. Matter of fact, the more that you continue to suffer, the more that you become Christ-like, and God then will reward you in terms of heaven. For after all, this world is not your home anyway. Of course, a reference to Bunyan's, Pilgrim Progress, of course, which was one of the common books within the 16th and the 17th century that early Christians read, meaning the white slave owners read. So otherworldliness was a part of it. The second aspect of it was being content with their life now. Just, don't fight for justice. Don't want all of those things. God is a just God. As long as you have, matter of fact, your salvation, everything is okay. So just be happy in the state where you're in, because of course God knows everything and God knows your plight. But again, going back to the otherworldliness. And so the social controls were always there to keep the slaves in their space and place. I think about the Apostle Paul, and specifically the writing that he shares as far as slaves being good, slaves, don't disrespect, don't disobey the slave owners. And so all of those things were emphasized to keep the slaves in their space and in their place, not for them to revolt, not for them to think about some concept of freedom, but to be very much, this is what your lot is, God knows, and don't worry about it because you're going to be able to get it in heaven. Now, it's interesting because I just want to go a little bit further as far as that's concerned. That was not only from what was preached, because you have to remember also that the slave masters introduced Christianity to their slaves. They were the ministers, so to speak, of their slaves. And so they share the things, of course, that benefited them. In addition to that, as time went on, they, were able to select men who were good slaves, who would also be able to share what the slave master told them, because remember, it was illegal for slaves to be able to read or write. And so all they were referring to and relying on was what the slave master told them about this good and gracious God that wanted them to stay in their space and place. Mm-hmm. And another part, not only in regards to what I've just simply shared, the themes of Christianity was always the emphasis upon the wickedness of humankind, the wickedness that relied within every human being, and particularly the slave. So it would be that, we're poor, wretched sinners, that we are, all of our righteousness is that of filthy rags, that we are, nothing in Christ, that we're not worthy of anything because we are quote unquote sinners.